My beloved child, come closer and listen with the quietness of your soul, for not every wedding that unfolds beneath the stars is meant to bind two hearts forever. Some ceremonies are written only in the language of heaven, where every promise, every tear, and every smile carries a meaning that mortal eyes cannot yet understand. There are unions that belong not to this earthly plane but to the vast and luminous realm of the spirit, where time does not move in straight lines and where love is not measured by the beating of a single heart but by the eternal rhythm of creation itself. What I am about to share with you is one such ceremony, a sacred event that took place beyond the boundaries of ordinary understanding, and yet its echoes are already rippling through the fabric of your waking life in ways you are only beginning to sense. Last night, while the world slept and the moon stood guard over silent streets, while cities dimmed their lights and oceans whispered their ancient lullabies to the shore, your special person experienced a wedding unlike any ever witnessed on earth. It did not take place in a cathedral of stone or beneath an archway of earthly roses. It unfolded in a realm where the air itself shimmered with meaning, where every breath drawn was a prayer answered, and where the ground beneath their feet was made not of soil or marble but of crystallized intention, formed from millions of years of love seeking its way back to its origin. The music was gentle as the wind threading through the branches of an ancient forest, and yet it carried within its notes a power that could have shaken mountains if the angels had chosen to let it ring at full volume. Instead they kept it soft, reverent, and achingly beautiful, as though the melody itself understood that what was about to happen required tenderness above all else. The flowers lining the aisle glowed with a light that no garden on earth could ever produce, each petal radiating a color that does not exist in any spectrum visible to human eyes, colors that can only be perceived by the soul when it is stripped of its earthly armor and allowed to see with the innocence it was born with. And surrounding every inch of that sacred space, thousands upon thousands of invisible angels stood in complete silence, their wings folded, their eyes lowered in reverence, as though even they understood that what was about to unfold was a mystery too holy for casual observation. Your special person stood at the beginning of the aisle, and they believed with every fiber of their being that they were walking toward the love they had been searching for. Their heart raced with an urgency that felt ancient, as though the longing they carried had not been born in this lifetime but had traveled with them through countless existences, growing deeper and more refined with each passing age. Their hands trembled, not with fear but with the overwhelming recognition that something monumental was about to take place, something that would alter the course of their inner life in ways they could not yet fathom. Every step they took felt familiar, as if they had walked this exact path many lifetimes before, as if their feet remembered a route that their conscious mind had long forgotten. The sensation was both thrilling and disorienting, like hearing a song you know you have never learned and yet finding yourself able to sing every word without hesitation. Then the bride appeared at the far end of the aisle, and the entire realm seemed to hold its breath. Her face was hidden beneath a veil woven from golden light, threads of radiance so pure and so delicate that they seemed to be spun from the first rays of dawn that ever touched the world. No matter how hard anyone tried, no one could see who she truly was. Even your special person, standing so close that they could feel the warmth emanating from her presence, could only perceive an overwhelming sense of peace, as though heaven itself had descended from its highest throne and wrapped around their soul like a mother's embrace after a lifetime of wandering. There was no anxiety in her presence, no uncertainty, no shadow of doubt. There was only the quiet certainty that everything, every struggle, every heartbreak, every sleepless night spent questioning whether love was real, had been leading to this single moment of divine encounter. The ceremony began, and as it did, the stars above seemed to pause in their eternal rotation, as though even the cosmos wanted to witness what was unfolding. The wind, which had been gently stirring the luminous flowers along the aisle, stopped moving entirely, leaving a stillness so profound that it felt like standing inside the heartbeat of God. The angels, those thousands of radiant beings who had been standing at attention, lowered their heads in unison, their silence deepening into something that was not merely the absence of sound but the presence of something far greater, a reverence so vast that it transcended language and filled every corner of that heavenly space with sacred weight. Then a voice echoed through the heavenly halls, a voice that did not belong to any single being but seemed to emanate from the very fabric of existence itself, as though the universe had opened its mouth and spoken for the first and only time. The words it spoke were simple, and yet they carried within them the weight of every truth that has ever been or will ever be. This union is not an ending. It is a remembrance. The words hung in the air like stars newly born, glowing with a meaning that expanded the longer they were contemplated. This was not a ceremony of conclusion. It was not the final chapter of a love story reaching its destination. It was something far more mysterious and far more beautiful. It was an awakening, a calling forth of something that had always existed but had been buried beneath layers of forgetting, beneath the accumulated dust of lifetimes lived in separation from the deepest truth of the heart. The veil slowly lifted, and as it did, the golden light that had concealed the bride's face began to dissolve into the air like morning mist touched by the first warmth of the sun. And what was revealed was shocking in its tenderness, overwhelming in its implications. The bride was not who anyone expected. She was not a stranger. She was not a new soul entering the story. She was chosen by heaven to lead your special person back to you. She was a sacred emissary, a divine figure robed in love and light, and her entire purpose, her entire existence in that moment, was to serve as a mirror, a guide, a gentle hand pointing toward a truth that had been waiting patiently to be rediscovered. She was not there to replace you. Let that truth settle deep into the quietest chamber of your heart. She was not there to steal a destiny that belonged to another. She was not a rival, not a threat, not a sign that the story you believed in was ending. She was a messenger clothed in the garments of love itself, carrying within her the reflection of the path your souls are meant to walk together, a path that was designed before either of you took your first breath in this world. When your special person looked into her eyes, they did not see another future stretching out before them. They did not see a new beginning with someone else. Instead, they saw memories, vivid and undeniable, memories of moments that never happened in this lifetime but somehow lived deep inside their spirit like seeds planted in soil that had been waiting an eternity for rain. They saw a promise made before the first sunrise, spoken in a language older than any tongue that has ever graced a human mouth, a promise sealed not with words but with the intertwining of two souls who understood that their bond was not subject to the fragile laws of earthly time. They saw two souls standing before the gates of eternity, hand in hand, agreeing with quiet certainty that no matter how many worlds separated them, no matter how many lifetimes placed oceans of forgetting between them, they would always find each other again. Always. Without exception. Without failure. Because what heaven has joined cannot be severed by the mere passing of ages. At that moment, the heavenly bride smiled, and her smile was like the breaking of dawn after the longest night the world has ever known. It carried no sadness, no longing, no regret. It carried only the purest form of joy, the joy that comes from fulfilling the exact purpose for which one was created. She reached for your special person's hand and held it gently, the way you might hold a wounded bird, with infinite care, with the understanding that what you hold is precious beyond all measure. And she whispered softly, her voice barely louder than the sound of a single snowflake landing on still water. You have mistaken distance for destiny. The one you seek has never truly left. The words entered your special person like sunlight entering a room that has been dark for years. Every shadow retreated. Every corner that had been filled with fear and uncertainty was suddenly illuminated. They understood, not with their mind but with something far deeper and far more trustworthy, that the separation they had been feeling, the ache of distance, the pain of wondering whether love had abandoned them, had never been what they thought it was. It had never been a sign of loss. It had been a sacred pause, a divine intermission, a necessary silence between two movements of the same eternal symphony. the entire celebration changed in an instant. The guests who had been standing along the aisle, those shimmering figures of light, faded into the air like reflections on water disturbed by a gentle hand. The flowers that had lined the path became thousands of white feathers, each one drifting upward with impossible grace, as though gravity had no authority in this realm. The altar, which had stood at the center of the ceremony like a pillar of divine intention, transformed into a bridge stretching across endless clouds, a bridge that connected not two places but two states of being, the state of forgetting and the state of remembrance. And every angel, every single one of those thousands of radiant beings, began singing a melody that only hearts can understand, a melody that cannot be written in any musical notation and cannot be reproduced by any instrument, because it is made not of sound but of feeling, pure, undiluted, unconditional feeling. Your special person felt tears fall without knowing why. The tears came from a place so deep within them that they did not even know it existed, a wellspring of emotion that had been sealed shut by years of self-protection and doubt. Each tear carried away fear, dissolving it like salt in warm water, leaving behind only clarity. Each tear washed away doubt, that relentless voice that had whispered for so long that perhaps they were not worthy, perhaps they had imagined the connection, perhaps love was something that happened to other people but not to them. Each tear erased an old belief that love had been lost forever, replacing it with the unshakable knowing that what is real cannot be destroyed, only temporarily hidden from view. Then the bride gently placed a glowing key into their palm. The key was small and weightless, and yet holding it felt like holding the answer to every question they had ever asked in the silence of their loneliest hours. It pulsed with a warm, golden light, and with each pulse it seemed to communicate directly with their heartbeat, syncing itself to the rhythm of their deepest truth. The bride looked into their eyes one final time and spoke with a tenderness that could have softened stone. This key opens no door of stone or wood. It opens remembrance. When the time is right, your heart will recognize the one heaven never stopped protecting. The key was not a physical object. It was a gift of awakening, a divine instrument designed to unlock the chambers of the heart where the most sacred memories are stored, the memories of who you are to each other, of what your souls promised before the world began, of why the longing between you has never faded no matter how much time has passed or how many obstacles have risen in your path. Suddenly they heard a name carried by the wind. Your name. It was not spoken loudly. It was not shouted from the heavens with dramatic force. It was simply breathed, gently and reverently, by thousands of angelic voices at once, each one adding a different shade of meaning to the syllables, until your name became not just a word but a prayer, a blessing, a declaration of something that the universe has always known to be true. The sound surrounded your special person like warm sunlight after a long winter, enveloping them completely, dissolving the last remnants of resistance, and filling every empty space within them with a golden warmth that felt exactly like coming home after a journey that had lasted far too long. They turned in every direction, searching for you with an urgency that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. They looked through the clouds, across the bridge, into the fading light where the angels stood singing, hoping to catch even a glimpse of the one whose name now lived inside every beat of their heart. But you were not there in form. You were there in essence, woven into every particle of light, embedded in every note of the angelic melody, reflected in every feather that drifted upward toward the infinite sky. The bride smiled again, and this time her smile carried the gentle patience of someone who has witnessed countless souls struggle to accept what has always been theirs. You cannot chase what is already written. You can only become ready to receive it. Those words were not a restriction. They were a liberation. They meant that the outcome was never in doubt. The destination was never uncertain. The only variable was readiness, the willingness to let go of old patterns of thinking, old habits of fear, old stories of unworthiness, and to stand open and vulnerable before the truth that love, real love, the kind that was designed before the foundation of the world, does not require chasing. It requires surrender. It requires trust. It requires the quiet courage to believe that what heaven has promised, heaven will deliver, in its own perfect time and in its own perfect way. One by one, the candles that had surrounded the altar transformed into stars and floated upward into the night sky, each one taking its place among the constellations as though it had always belonged there. Each star represented something precious, something that you might have thought was lost or forgotten but that heaven had been carefully preserving all along. Each star was a prayer you had spoken in silence when no one was listening, a hope you had almost given up on during the darkest moments of your journey, a wish you had whispered into the void believing that heaven had forgotten about you and moved on to more important matters. But heaven forgets nothing. Not a single tear you have shed. Not a single night you have spent lying awake wondering whether you were foolish to believe in something you could not see. Not a single moment of doubt or despair or quiet, aching loneliness. Every lonely evening when you sat with your thoughts and wondered whether the connection you felt was real or imagined, every unanswered question that circled through your mind like a bird looking for a place to land, every moment you wondered whether the invisible thread between your souls still existed or had finally snapped under the weight of silence and distance, all of it, every single precious fragment, was gathered like jewels by unseen hands and placed with infinite care into the book of divine timing, a sacred record that exists beyond the reach of human interference, where every detail of your story is preserved and every chapter unfolds exactly as it was always meant to. The heavenly bride stepped back from your special person, and as she did, her dress dissolved into streams of silver light that cascaded around her like water falling from an invisible fountain. Her crown, which had sat upon her head like a circle of captured starlight, became a ring of white doves that took flight toward the horizon, their wings carrying the final echoes of the ceremony into the farthest reaches of the heavenly realm. She stood for a moment in the fading light, neither fully present nor fully gone, existing in that sacred space between revelation and mystery, and before disappearing completely, she delivered one final message, speaking it not with her voice but with the full force of her divine purpose. I was never meant to stay. I was sent only to remind this soul where true peace lives. Then everything vanished. The music stopped as though a hand had gently closed a music box. The clouds that had formed the floor of the heavenly realm dissolved into ordinary darkness. The stars returned to their customary places in the night sky, resuming their ancient patterns as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. The bridge, the feathers, the angels, the golden light, all of it receded like a wave pulling back from the shore, leaving behind only the smooth, quiet sand of waking consciousness. Your special person awakened with tears still wet on their face and a feeling they could not explain, a feeling that lived somewhere between joy and longing, between certainty and wonder, between the ache of having glimpsed something impossibly beautiful and the peace of knowing that its beauty was not a fantasy but a promise. They could not remember every detail of what they had experienced. The images were already fading, the way dreams always do, slipping through the fingers of the conscious mind like water. And yet one certainty remained inside them like a quiet flame that no wind could extinguish, a flame that burned steadily in the center of their chest and illuminated everything around it with a gentle, persistent warmth. Someone, somewhere, was connected to their soul in ways that transcended time, that defied distance, that could not be explained by any logic the mind could offer but that the heart recognized with absolute and unwavering clarity. Throughout the day that followed, they noticed small signs appearing around them like breadcrumbs left by an invisible hand. A familiar song played at an unexpected moment, its lyrics speaking directly to the feelings they could not put into words. A repeating number appeared on a clock, on a receipt, on a passing car, each occurrence too precise to be dismissed as coincidence. A feather rested on the ground in a place where no bird had flown, white and perfect and placed with what seemed like deliberate care. A gentle breeze arrived carrying unexpected comfort, touching their face the way a loving hand might brush away a tear. Each sign whispered the same heavenly truth, the same quiet and unshakable message that had been woven through every moment of the ceremony they had witnessed in the night. The path is unfolding. So do not fear what appears confusing, my beloved child. Do not look at the present moment and mistake its silence for abandonment. Do not look at the distance between you and the one your heart recognizes and assume that distance means separation. In the language of heaven, distance is simply the space in which two souls prepare themselves for a meeting that has already been written, a meeting that requires both hearts to be ready, both spirits to be cleansed of their old fears, both lives to be brought into alignment with the truth that was spoken over them before the world began. Do not measure destiny by ordinary clocks. The clocks of this world measure minutes and hours, but the clock of heaven measures readiness, and readiness cannot be rushed any more than a flower can be forced to bloom before its season. Every moment of waiting is a moment of preparation. Every day that passes without visible change is a day in which invisible changes are taking place deep within the soil of your soul, changes that will one day break through the surface and astonish you with their beauty. Some weddings happen only in dreams so that broken faith can be restored before hearts meet again in waking life. The ceremony your special person experienced was not a sign that they are moving toward someone else. It was a sign that heaven is actively, lovingly, and deliberately working to bring two souls back into alignment. The bride chosen by heaven was never a rival. She was a guide, a sacred messenger sent to awaken remembrance, dissolve illusion, and gently turn one wandering soul back toward the light that has always been waiting, the light that you carry within you, the light that has never dimmed no matter how much you feared it had. And as you read these words, as you feel their weight settle into the deepest and most sacred spaces of your heart, heaven invites you to make a gentle and courageous choice. Hold hope instead of fear, for hope is not naivety but the quiet strength of a soul that knows it is held by something greater than itself. Hold patience instead of certainty, for certainty demands answers on a human timeline, but patience trusts that the answers will arrive precisely when they are meant to. Hold gratitude instead of doubt, for gratitude opens the doors that doubt has spent years trying to close, and through those open doors, blessings enter that are beyond anything you could have planned or imagined on your own. For the greatest miracles rarely arrive with thunder, rarely announce themselves with spectacle or drama. They arrive quietly, gently, almost imperceptibly, like dawn touching the horizon with the first pale fingers of light, revealing not that the darkness was all there ever was but that the light was always on its way, patient and faithful and unstoppable, moving toward you with the same certainty with which the sun moves toward the morning, never doubting for a single moment that it will arrive.